what? No. I'm not talking about this Monday. I'm talking about it now. I'm sorry. Nope. Ocean says, what you're looking for might be measured in hours. No, I'm angry. This one actually does piss me off. I don't have fan art for this one because I wasn't planning this one. Okay, so look at this. This is a Wayback Machine article. This is from January of this year. By the time of Stonewall, we had 50 to 60 gay groups in the country. A year later, 1,500. Before the 1960s, almost everything about living openly as a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer person was illegal. The Stonewall Uprising on June 28, 1969 is a milestone in the quest for LGBTQ civil rights and provided momentum for a movement. Now, for those who don't know, this is what Pride is based off of. Pride is based off of the Stonewall Riots. The Stonewall Riots happened, well, I don't need to get into the entire history of them. But the fact of the matter is, it was one of the first literal bricks thrown publicly in an ever-mounting exchange in an attempt to gain human rights for LGBTQ people. The argument is always Stonewall was a riot and Pride is a compromise. Pride is 100% as a movement. It is 100% built to be a celebration of the human rights that gay and trans people have managed to accumulate over the years. But if you look at the website right now, it reads this. Before the 1960s, almost everything about living openly as a lesbian, gay, or bisexual person was illegal. Well, that's very curious. That's very strange. That's awkward. Why does it say that, huh? Ocean says, oh no, when I send him a WhatsApp, it makes noises because I have it open now. So what is this? Well, in short, this is trans erasure. Why does that matter? Well, let's talk about what trans erasure is real quick so that you can understand why this matters in just a bit. So trans erasure is the idea that trans people either do not exist or are rare. Now, if you believe that trans people do not exist, if you believe that they are incredibly rare, what can this lead to? Well, it leads to human rights being stripped away. Because what's that argument that's been used by the right for years? Why would we make laws and policies for such a minute amount of people in the population? Why should they matter? Well, when you start dehumanizing trans people, it's easier to discriminate against them. When you start removing their rights, it becomes infinitely easier to discriminate against them as well. And you can't remove human rights from people who are not human, so you dehumanize against them. If you engage in trans erasure, if you get rid of the history of their struggles, if you get rid of the history of their fight for human rights, you can change the narrative and make it seem like being trans is a new thing. You can make it seem like being trans is some brand new thing that has just recently affected the youth. And in fact, we have a word for that very particular phenomenon. It's not trans panic. That one's about whether or not you're allowed to kill somebody when you're having sex with them because she has a dick, which is a thing that's still a legal defense to use in several states. Look it up. I'm not even shitting you. I wish I was shitting you. No, the term we're looking for is social contagion. Social contagion. Let me go ahead and look it up for you real quick. It is the idea that behaviors, emotions, or attitudes are spread often through a group of people, very typically young people. Being trans has been called a social contagion. And in fact, there are several outlets that have tried to argue that rapid onset gender dysphoria is a result of this social contagion for being trans. And it's easier to make arguments for the social contagion of trans people if those people don't have a fucking history. So if you check out this article real quick, we actually do have some fun information about social contagion. Also, Ocean, if you wanted to know how quickly I can whip up a topic, this is how quickly I can whip up a topic. A recent study claiming to describe more than 1,600 possible cases of socially contagious syndrome was retracted in June for failing to obtain any ethics approval from its institutional review board. The survey examined rapid onset gender dysphoria, a proposed condition that attributes adolescent gender distress to exposure to transgender people through friends or social media. The idea is basically if you've got people around you who are trans, the likelihood that you will be trans goes up, which is not actually true. It's more that if you're already trans, the likelihood that you are willing to express that you're trans goes up. But we don't have the data for the foundation of that to figure out whether or not you were trans first because, well, historically, we did things to trans people like eliminating their human rights. It's almost like there used to be a site that historically was known as one of the first bricks thrown in favor of trans rights that has now been erased, or at least the trans footprint in that particular movement has been erased. That's weird. That's so weird. When you remove transgender history, you can make it seem like being trans is part of a social contagion. The reality is, transgender people have existed in many cultures throughout history. They've been in Thailand, they've been in the United States, they've been in a bunch of places. But we tend, here in the States, to trace a lot of this back to the 50s and 60s, which is where the Stonewall Riots took place. That's where the terms transgender, gender, and gender identity started emerging in our common parlance. In fact, actually, if memory serves, it was Money who coined gender, if I'm remembering correctly. I may not be remembering correctly. I'm doing this off the top of my head. Now, in 1952, in the United States, was when we had our first widely publicized sex reassignment surgery. In 1976, there was a New Jersey case that ruled that trans people who had undergone gender-affirming care were allowed to marry as their legal sex. All of this history, all of this fighting, getting erased, is very, very bad. Because when you erase this, you get to teach a new generation that this is just hysteria. You get to teach a new generation that this is just some new thing the woke kids are doing. But that's not what it is. It's been a thing in multiple countries for years. It's been a thing in the United States for years, and it's been a public thing for more than 70 of those years. And a lot of that began at fucking Stonewall. And yet apparently, conversations about the quest for civil rights for LGBTQ people need to have a little asterisk added to them. Need to have a little asterisk put on where it's maybe not the trans people. Maybe not them. That's another thing that at least Ocean did bring up here. LGB has been a very long-standing thing that TERFs have been trying to push into common parlance. A TERF is somebody who is a radical feminist who doesn't like trans people. It is a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. They're not actually feminists. They're just bigots. Movements like LGB without the T have been gaining more and more traction. And it's only with the current Trump administration that movements like that have gained any form of legitimacy. Aaron Reed did some reporting on this as well. And I'm going to go ahead and show you hers real quick. And totally not, because I've been given this on the spot, and I am putting together all the resources for this video on the fly. I'm totally not relying on Aaron being an expert in this right now because of that. But I'm definitely doing that.
The National Park Service has just removed all mention of transgender people from Stonewall National Monument at Trump's direction. And whenever I mean all mention, I mean every single mention. On the webpage, they literally changed LGBTQ to LGB on the main website, removing trans people from any role in Stonewall. On the subpages, they've used what can best be described as a control plus find and replace feature to simply remove the word transgender from every subpage. This has led to some ridiculous and grammatically incorrect pages, such as the page on trans woman Sylvia Rivera, who had a huge role in the Stonewall movement. The National Park Service page from Stonewall now says Sylvia Rivera began fighting for gay and rights.
Gay and
no, literally,
rights?
They removed transgender, and now it literally just says gay and rights instead of gay and transgender rights. This is abhorrent. They're erasing trans people from history in front of our eyes, even the very history that we played a huge role in making. You can't spell Stonewall without the T. Transgender people were there. We're still here, and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, they literally... Hold on. Is that... I trust Aaron. I trust Aaron with this stuff, but I am very curious now. I want to see that. Is there a way to see... So, nps.gov. So, I didn't believe it, but... So, originally, I looked at the Sylvia Riviera post here, and I was like, well, it says trans everywhere here, but it's not here that I needed to be looking at. It was here. Sylvia Riviera, laying back and posing on the edge of a water fountain, she began fighting for gay and transgender rights, while also helping homeless drag queens like herself, gay youth, and trans people. But they obviously did a Control F to get rid of the word transgender, because when you look at the current version of the website, because this is the one from the Wayback Machine, Sylvia Riviera laid back posing on the edge of the water fountain. At a young age, she began fighting for gay and rights. Gay and rights. Fucking connect with the parks you love by joining the fountain. No. Gay and. Fucking hell. It does say the word trans later on, which means that this has been a very sloppy attempt to literally engage in trans erasure. Now, again, I want to go ahead and make a quick tangent about this because I find it so goddamn funny. Do you remember when the skeptic community had a big split over gender? Now, one of the times there was a split over the gender conversation was in regards to rationality rules and essence of thought. At the time, my stance was that I stood with rationality rules. I didn't think he was a transphobe. I just thought he was wrong. Cybershill says, I was there. I was there in more ways than you know. And ultimately, most people kind of came down on the side of rationality rules and not EOT, as evidenced by EOT's channel kind of plummeting around that time, and, well, rationality rules not. So didn't the spiral start I don't know what that word means. So there's been a lot of instances where the skeptic community has had a split because somebody in the skeptic community said something about the rights of others. And then people went, that has nothing to do with atheism. To which the correct answer is nothing has anything to do with atheism. That's the entire fucking point. So, there was a common refrain given by Christians and nationalists and other idiots during this time frame. And that refrain was, why does the atheist community care so much about trans people? Why can't they shut the fuck up about trans people? Ocean says, who in regards to what? I have forgotten the words that I said just a second ago. Maggoting equals going MAGA. Also, one of the other instances where this happened was with Richard Carrier, when he said that atheism needs an actual social movement behind it that is for something that is actually actionable. And so atheism plus feminism basically was what he was advocating for. This caused a split in the community as well. So when the question is levied, why did the atheist community, why did the skeptic community care about trans people? Why was that a hill that many of us were willing to die on? Again, even those who came to the defense of rationality rules still ended up fighting very hard. Not all of them. Some of them were idiots like Noel Plume. But for those of us who did decide to continue to fight for the rights of trans people, why did we care so much? Because this is the shit that we saw on the wall. This is the shit that we knew was going to end up happening. Maybe not in specifics. But you engage in erasure when you do everything in your power to pretend that the actual movement for trans people didn't do anything, didn't mean anything. Steigander said, so my opinion on why atheists support trans rights is because it's the right thing to do. Right, but you couldn't get a lot of them to agree on what was the right thing to do in the first place. The thing that we were worried about happening was trans rights being rolled back. And a lot of us didn't believe that that was going to happen. I remember having conversations about abortion where I disagreed with, for instance, Jimmy Snow, where Jimmy saw the writing on the wall and said that abortion was going to be a right that the Supreme Court is going to take away. And I didn't agree. I was even willing to put money on it, but I don't have money anymore, so that wasn't a smart thing for me to do in the first place. I disagreed then, and I was wrong. Because if there is a human right held by someone, then the conservative's job is almost always going to be to try to strip it away. And the way they do so is by policing language. If you can reframe a woman's right to her own body as a baby's right to live, it is easier to convince people that you're not the villain here. If you can convince people that the argument is not a trans person's right to exist and a trans person's right to compete, but instead a cis person's right to win, a cis person's right to safe spaces, you can convince people that trans people do not belong. And if you can couple this with removing their historical contributions to society, it becomes infinitely easier to dehumanize. It becomes infinitely easier to strip away everything that those trans people have fought for over the years. And it ultimately leads you to where we are right now, where CNN is worried about whether Donald Trump is going to revoke certain permissions for the news organization because they're not willing to use the language that he wants to be used in regards to trans people. Now's the time to wake the fuck up. Now's the time to recognize what y'all voted for. What can we do about this? Well, the very first thing you can do, I'm going to be perfectly honest, is if you have a friend who is trans, talk to them. Check and see if they're doing okay. If they need something, hell, even if it's something as small as like a fucking snack, be there to help provide that. Do whatever you can to show the people around you who may be trans, may be gay, may be worried, may be scared, that there is at least some emotional support rock around them that is willing to help. And this is going to be infinitely more helpful if you are a cis person. If you are somebody who is unaffected by the current administration and you are still willing to be there for the person, you are an infinitely more stable source than anyone else. The trans community right now needs to not be insular. The trans community right now needs protection. And there are, quite frankly, more of us who are cis and straight than there are people who are trans and gay. We should probably be doing what we can to step up. In terms of legislation, my advice is going to be the same thing as it has been for a very long time. Get involved with your local DSA chapter. There's a link in the description below. Get involved in contacting your representatives, arguing against them. Also, equality.org sends out, and the Human Rights Campaign sends out emails when they need people to go lobby. And as somebody who's done it, it's not the hardest thing in the world to do. It'll be much easier the second time you do it than the first time. The first time, when you get locked into an elevator and you are trying to tell a Republican congressperson that they need to vote on something as they are playing dumb, pretending that they have no idea what you're talking about, it's going to be stressful. I know from experience. But you still need to do it. And it needs to not just be trans people who are arguing in favor of themselves. We need everybody arguing in favor. Pono says, donate to Trans Lifeline. Yeah, do that if you want, but fuck no. Stop with the charity shit. I'm sorry. The time to, let's just throw money at a charity. No. I agree we should be throwing money at charities, but that is not the advice I'm going to give, because that is not advice that actually helps change the world. That is not advice that actually does anything actionable. It's time to get our hands dirty. Getting your hands dirty doesn't involve just throwing some money at a charity. As for Trans Lifeline, I'm currently talking with, I don't know if it's the professor or if it's somebody who's working on behalf of the professor, to see what I can provide to his donation stream for Trans Lifeline. I can literally show you guys that I have those DMs right now, where I am trying to figure out what I can give in there for Trans Lifeline stuff. So that's not me saying that you should not donate to Trans Lifeline. I am putting my foot where my mouth is there too. My point is, that is the lazy way out. My point is, that is the nothing burger way out. Get your hands dirty in politics. Go see what seats are being unopposed by Republicans. Go see what things you can advocate for in front of fucking senators. Don't just throw money at something and think that that makes it better, and then go fuck off. A lot of us have the habit of doing that. But the thing that matters infinitely more right now is what shit you're willing to actually do. What camera you're able to get in front of, what people you're able to get in front of. That's what fucking matters. That does not say that charity doesn't matter. I just think in terms of what things people should be focusing on, the charity is the secondary thing. Getting involved with your local Democratic chapters, getting involved with your local Socialist chapters, making sure that Republicans don't run unopposed, making sure that Republican senators and Republican representatives know that you vote in Republican primaries, so that your words have consequence to them. Those are the things that matter right now. Threatening politicians with their jobs because we are their employers. Our taxes go to paying their bills. Without us, they don't fucking have anything. And if you don't have a local Democratic chapter, then what the fuck are you doing? Why aren't you making one? Wingcaster says, what can I do as a foreigner? You can send money to me. I'm kidding. That's not what you do. That's not what you do. If you're a foreigner, be there as a support network for friends of yours in the United States who are doing these things. Be there as support for those people. Whatever they need. If you can help financially with them, help them. If you can help them shout things out on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on YouTube, help them do that. But that's all I've got on this one. And you know what? For a topic that got thrown together literally 3 seconds, after I was thrown the article, I don't think I did a bad job on it. Insert end of video tagline here. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full-time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravelern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.